This podcast is brought to you by Radio 786.
So, the Madeleine, the vessel carrying that much-needed humanitarian aid, was about to reach Gaza, and the Zionist military assaulted the vessel in international waters. What you hear of in the news is the flag that the ship was carrying and who has jurisdiction over the flag. And bear in mind, this is international waters. So the flag for the ship, I think, is a UK flag. So the UK generally has jurisdiction over this particular ship. There are exceptions to the rule, but in international laws, the flag of the ship, that's the one that has jurisdiction over that particular vessel if crimes are committed aboard it and whatnot. All right. So the occupation illegally boarded the boat and seized control, which was close to breaking the siege on Gaza. Moments before the assault, the activists on board released footage of what looked like a white chemical substance that was thrown onto the vessel. The 11 activists and a journalist on board have been kidnapped, and communication was cut off. So for reaction, we're joined by Radio 786 journalist Hadijah Davids. Assalamu alaikum to you, Hadijah.
Walaikum salam, Rafiq.
Hadijah, we know that this story is very close to you, and that you probably have first-hand experience about what it's like to be on a ship like this that is under siege and where the threat of real death is imminent. This reaction by the Israeli occupation was expected. However, there was a glimmer of hope that the activists would stand a slim chance of actually breaking the siege. Do you believe the activists were prepared for this?
They were, of course, prepared. I mean, we can see from all the messaging throughout this mission, not just for the Madeleine's voyage, for the Conscience as well, for every other attempt. Even before 2010, we saw the activists with their main intent, of course, being to break the naval siege on Gaza and to take aid into the enclave. For this one in particular, we've seen how coordinated and how learning from the experiences of previous activists, these activists have had a plan, and you can see that with their plan, the main concern here is for their safety. All they're doing is taking in aid into Gaza, and that was it. It's 12 civilians, one journalist. Well, the journalist is included there. One of them is a jurist as well, with Palestinian origin as well. So the plan, of course, with the different people that are represented on that ship are from various different countries, and it just points that it is a international concern that the Israeli entity has besieged Gaza for so long, has been occupying Palestine for more than 7 decades, and is now committing genocide.
Yeah, so back in 2010, you were the only South African and a Radio 786 journalist who boarded the Mavi Marmara, the first Freedom Flotilla attempting to break the siege. Do the events playing out here actually, bring you flashbacks of that time?
Yeah, I was thinking about this yesterday actually, when the communications were first cut, and that was how they started with us as well. They send out these warning messages. The tone is calm, but the actions are violent. And we've seen it as well today with the Madeleine. The boat was rammed. And because of the previous drone attack where they dropped bombs on the Conscience last month, they used drones again this time, and instead of using bombs, it was a psychological warfare that they're using here, some kind of white substance that they've dropped on the activists as well. So they ram the boat, they board the boat, and then they claim, we're taking you to safety, but they're not actually. I mean, it's an act of piracy, it's an act of terrorism, targeting them in this way. That's similar to what they did to the Flotilla in 2010. It was all of the activists on board the boat were civilians, and then we had journalists as well. And so we see the similarities there. Of course, we were handcuffed. I don't, from the footage I've seen thus far, the Madeleine activists haven't been handcuffed. But you can see the kind of intimidation that they've used, the noises they were playing before they boarded the ship as well, the kind of lights flashing. It's all part of the kind of torture that they tried to put you through. With us, of course, they cut the communications. Then there was brutal attacks. 10 activists were killed. And then they cut off all of the aircon and everything else on the Mavi. It was like, it's a ferry boat, so it had all of that kind of infrastructure. What else they did was, because it was summer and we were basically, it was hot, they cut all that off. Um, the toilets, because it was a suction toilets, those were also cut off as well. We had to beg to go to the toilet. You didn't know what was going to happen to you. Um, all of these things that happened, and I'm thinking about what they may be experiencing now. The Israeli entity also released a video, claiming to be of them giving them, bottles of water and bread. But what is that in comparison to, boarding them illegally, abducting them, taking them against their will, when all they were doing was taking meager supplies to Gaza? I mean, compared to all the other aid that's stuck at the borders trying to get in, this is the kind of action they take for a civilian boat going in via the sea to Gaza.
Essentially, they are running their own propaganda campaign to show whoever their supporters are that they have hearts. But as you rightfully point out, they came in there using methods akin to terrorism. They terrorized the flotilla prior to boarding them, and this white substance, whatever it might be, a gas, a powder, whatever. I guess we don't know what that is yet. But this is akin to torture. There's no reason to have done that. This boat was defenseless. There were no military people on the boat. There were no weapons on the boat. So yeah, it's actually cowardice the way they conduct themselves. Reflecting on your time, yeah, go ahead.
It was the same unit that boarded the Mavi in 2010. So they're using the similar tactics as well.
Yeah, look, the in 2010 the Gaza Freedom Flotilla was launched by the Free Gaza movement, right? So that's the Mavi Mara, the boat you were on, and that was I think a Turkish flag, and if memory serves correctly, there were 9 or 10 activists actually killed on that particular boat.
So it was 9 initially. They were killed on board the boat, and one was injured. He was shot in the head, and he died a few years later. They kept him on life support, but he eventually died as well. And one of them was a Turkish American youth as well that was also killed on board the boat. And these again were civilians. And I remember sitting on that boat and thinking, because they were shouting over the intercoms, "Please, we are unarmed, we are civilians, please stop shooting." And yet we saw the kind of the tactics that the Israelis used as well. I remember seeing blood on the walls, blood on the steps. I saw a few bodies wrapped in white cloth. There were, these dogs on board the ship for whatever reason. We see these helicopters flying around the vessel, heavily armed youths standing there, and you couldn't do anything. And I'm just reflecting, it's around a similar time as well that it happened. I remember when they boarded the ship, it was just after Fajr. I remember the Fajr Adhan going off. And then that's when the attack started happening.
Actually, they were making Fajr.
Yeah.
They were making Fajr Salah on the back of the boat, if I'm not mistaken, right? When the boat started ramming them, there's those I don't know what they call those small boats, but they started ramming them around about Fajr time.
Yeah. So it's all part of the kind of psychological things that they try and do to you. And I remember even when we were abducted, of course, and taken to the occupation port of Ashdod. And then these teenagers in t-shirts with this navy on it come and grab you and take you through, and they say they're taking you for medical checks. But you didn't need to do any of these things. We were headed to Gaza. And then they just, whatever they can do to try and play with your mind, make you feel insecure. I mean, I was the only South African that had an issue with my passport at the time, because I think that's just when they brought in those, I think it was a hardback kind of whatever. It was different, and then that was also an issue of concern for them. So they try and isolate you, try and make you feel like anything could happen to you.
Wow, I can only imagine it must be hard for you to reflect on your time when you were kidnapped and you were held, under those conditions. Tell us, do you believe that these activists will be released sooner than expected?
Oh, again, we don't know. We've seen in previous instances where governments are now going to have to come in and do something about it. Hopefully, the governments of these activists will be proactive and ensure they're released, because there are no grounds for this, for the abduction in the first place. I mean, the Israeli entity always claims, oh, we are under attack. When a boat is going to Gaza, a place which you have no control over, because you do not run that part of Palestine. And then they claim these acts as acts of war. And so in one caption, the Israeli entity referred to the Madeleine and the activists as the selfie yacht. So you're seeing these kinds of derisive kind of words that they're using. But again, in terms of your question with what will be happening to these activists, only time will tell, but I'm sure pressure will be made placed against the Israeli entity, and these governments will come to the fore. Some of these governments are friendly with the Israeli entity as well. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Hadijah, we want to thank you for joining us this morning. We do understand that this must be a very touching and emotionally trying time for you as well. And as you point out, this happened roughly in the same month, the same time frame as what happened to you when you were on the Mavi Marmara. Thank you for joining us. That was Radio 786 journalist Hadijah Davids.
This podcast is brought to you by Radio 786.